南无本师释迦牟尼佛。南无本师释迦牟尼佛。南无本师释迦牟尼佛。I would like to obtain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, and for that aim, I will listen to the teachings and join this class. Okay, so we continue from yesterday. You might remember we shared a story of what happened to King Bimbisara and his queen, Queen Vaidehi. Was quite a dramatic story behind how this particular text or this particular sutra originated. So the sutra itself actually has that story that I shared with you yesterday. After that, the main part of the sutra then went on to cover two aspects. The first is on performing three categories of meritorious deeds or meritorious acts. And then the second part is the main, the most important part, called the 16 visualizations or the 16 contemplations. Okay, now let's look at forming the meritorious deeds or acts. So the Buddha, Sakyamuni, explains the importance of performing three categories of meritorious acts in order to be reborn in the Pure Land. So they are given as, firstly, at the level of a human and deva. They refers to people who aspire for rebirth in this Buddha land, should act filially towards their parents and support them, serve and respect their teachers and elders, be of compassionate mind, abstain from doing any injury, and cultivate the 10 virtuous actions. So the 10 virtuous actions sometimes is expressed as the 10 wholesome precepts. You might be familiar in terms of the bodily aspect, abstention from harming all beings or killing, abstention from taking the not given, and abstention from sexual misconduct. If expressed in a positive manner, not only not killing, but also protecting lives. Not only not stealing or taking what is not given, but to practice giving, generosity. And not only to abstain from sexual misconduct, but to be contented with one's marital status. And then there are 4 aspects related to speech. In precept terminology, abstention from false speech, from idle speech, from harsh speech, and from gossiping. So the positive aspect is to speak the truth, to speak harmoniously instead of creating disharmony, and speak only useful, and to speak with a gentle speech. Then finally, there is a category of 3 mental aspects. The precept is to abstain from extreme form of greed, and also strong anger and wrong views. The positive counterpart being to not only be free from greed, but to practice generosity, and not hatred, but to practice loving kindness and compassion, and finally to cultivate correct understanding instead of the wrong views. So this refers to the 10 virtuous actions, or the 10 wholesome acts. So at the level of Sravaka and Pacceka Buddha, in Chinese Buddhism, the stages of the spiritual path is divided into 3 levels. The first level is the level of human and deva. In Chinese terminology called Ren Shen and Tian Shen. Then there is a category of Sravaka Yana and Pratyeka Buddha Yana. So these refer to beings who are able to obtain a liberation for themselves. So the Sravakas are the sound hearers. In Chinese are Sen Wen, Sen Wen Sen. And Pratyeka Buddha in Chinese is translated as a Pi Zi Fo, or sometimes as a Tu Jue, the solitary Buddha, if you like. So these are the categories of saints who already are able to obtain liberations from samsara and become an arahant in the case of Sravaka, or become a Pratyeka Buddha. So the Sravakas listened to the Buddha's teaching, for example, practicing the Four Noble Truths, and became enlightened, became an arahant. In the case of Pratyeka Buddha, there are two categories. One who during the time when the Buddha's teaching is present, practice the Paticcasamuppada, or conditionality, if you like. And during the time when a Buddha's teaching no longer exists, this category of people will, through his own effort and contemplation and wisdom, realize the understanding of Paticcasamuppada, the law of conditionality, and become a solitary Buddha, or called Pratyeka Buddha. So this is the second level. So they should take and observe the vow of seeking refuge with the three jewels, fulfill all moral precepts, and not lower their dignity or neglect any ceremonial observance. Actually, I don't quite like this translation. This is a translation by a Japanese scholar. In simple Chinese, the last 不犯为仪 refers to mannerism. Each culture has their own mannerism, I suppose. For example, Japanese are very particular. Japanese, if you go and work in a company, especially those dealing with direct contact with customer, the first thing you have to learn is to bow, to bow properly, 90 degrees. And that is called Wei Yi. So sometimes when translated as not lower their dignity or neglect any ceremonial observance, we don't know what this is talking about. But it's just each culture has the idea of what form a good manners, if you like. Even in the West, I remember when I first went to study in New Zealand, I stayed with Kiwi families. So when they take meals, they have their table manners also. So that we learn. In the Western table manners, you're not supposed to speak while taking the meal. This is very different in the case of Chinese. When you go to a Chinese dinner, it's very, very noisy. There's nothing absolute about this, but what is considered as a good manners, when you go to a different culture, you just follow them. Like the saying, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. So when you are with Kiwis, do what the Kiwis do. Then finally, at the level of Bodhisattva, they should give their whole mind to the attainment of perfect wisdom, deeply believe in the principle of cause and effect, study and recite the Mahayana doctrine, and persuade and encourage others who pursue the same cause as themselves. So for those of you who have been attending Venerable Chiran's class on Lam Rim, you may also have already learned about in the Lam Rim teaching, the stages of the path is divided into three levels. The lower level, which is what is described in Chinese Buddhism as the human and deva level. And then the second level, the middle level, here described as a Sravaka and a Pratyeka Buddha level. or Sravakayana and Paccekabuddhayana. So in Buddhist texts, even in Mahayana Buddhist texts, there is no such term as a Hinayana. You don't find that in any sutra. But there is a term called Sravakayana, Paccekabuddhayana, and Bodhisattvayana. So this is equivalent to the Lamrim stage as a middle level. And then the highest level is that of a Bodhisattva. So, but in the details, maybe some of the elements differ. So afterwards you can discuss in particular about this. Those of you who are not taking notes later on, you can come to help yourself with this laptop during the discussion. Okay. Now, having covered the three categories of wholesome deeds, then we come to an important part of the text which deals with the 16 visualizations. So the Buddha then goes on to teach Vaidehi how to visualize the Pure Land, to further her efforts in attaining a rebirth there. And Sakyamuni Buddha describes 13 contemplations or mental visualization exercises that are to be followed in order. So you don't choose any of the visualization, but you have to do the first visualization on the setting sun, and then followed by 13 others. So the 13 visualizations are described in the order as follows. Firstly, the setting sun. Secondly, on an expanse of water. So this visualization of the water in the Pure Land. And thirdly, the ground in the Pure Land. Fourthly, trees in the Pure Land. These are jeweled trees. And then fifthly, the ponds in the Pure Land. Sixthly, various objects in the Pure Land. Let's take example of the first visualization. It's too long to go through all the 16 visualizations. So to give you some flavor of what this visualization is about, I've chosen two. The first visualization of the Pure Land, starting with the setting sun, in fact, is the easiest. It's the shortest of the visualization. And then the visualization of the Buddha, of the Bodhisattvas, I will also choose an example. So out of the 13 visualizations, I will share with you two as example. So the first is the visualization on the setting sun. So we do this as follows. All beings, if not blind from birth, are uniformly possessed of sight, and they all see the setting sun. You should sit down properly, looking in the western direction, and prepare your thought for a close meditation on the sun. Cause your mind to be firmly fixed on it so as to have an unwavering perception by the exclusive application of your mind. And gaze upon it in particular when it is about to set and looks like a suspended drum. So those of you who had seen a sunset has this type of vision and experience. After you have thus seen the sun, let that image remain clear and fixed, whether your eyes be shut or open. Such is the perception of the sun, which is the first meditation. So this is the setting sun. And then you go on to visualize the water, and so on. So in terms of the Pure Land, from the visualization of the setting sun to the water, and so on, to the ponds and various other objects. Now, also to give you an idea of the visualization of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, I'm going to share with you the ninth visualization of Amitabha Buddha himself. And this is quite lengthy in comparison with the visualization of the setting sun. So let's go on. The text itself. Further, when this perception is gained, you should next proceed to meditate on the bodily marks and the light of Buddha Amitayos. So in every visualization, from the second visualization, so for example, when you visualize the water, when this perception is gained, meaning after you have successfully done the visualization of the setting sun, then you should proceed to meditate on this next visualization. Okay, so in this case, now we come to visualization of the bodily marks and the lights of Buddha Amitayos. You should know, Ananda, that the body of Buddha Amitayos is 100,000 million times as bright as the color of Jambunanda gold of the heavenly abbot of Yama. The height of that Buddha is 600,000 of kotis. A koti is 10 million of yojanas. One yojana is 8 miles. So innumerable as are the sands of the river Ganges. The Indian mind, when they talk about large numbers, always described in this very, how to say, exaggerated form. So, talk about 600,000 and then, tens of millions and then the number of sands in Ganges River. So it really stretch your imagination. You have to go beyond what our normal mind can think of. The white twist of hair between the eyebrows, all turning to the right, is just like the 5 Sumeru mountains. For those of you who are familiar with the Chinese chanting, before the chanting of Amitabha, there is a verses of praise. Ami Tofo Shen Jing Se, Xiang Hao Guang Ming Wu Den Lun, and then Bai Hao Wan Zhuan Wu Sui Mi, Gan Mu Chen Jing Si Da Hai. All this come from this text. So you get it. Now you know where they come from. So it describes the Buddha, the white twist of hair between the eyebrows. Sometimes people call this the position, what you call the third eye position, going in clockwise. So all turning to the right, meaning clockwise, just like the 5 Sumeru mountains. The eyes of the Buddha are like the water of the 4 great oceans. The blue and the white are quite distinct. All the roots of hair of his body issue forth brilliant rays, which are also like the Sumeru mountains. I don't know whether you're still with the text. Don't know whether your visualization or your imagination can be as good. But that's not all. It goes on to say, the halo of that Buddha is like 100 million great galaxies, in that there are Buddhas miraculously created to the number of 1 million of innumerable as the sands of the Ganges. Each of these Buddhas has for attendants a great assembly of numberless bodhisattvas who are also miraculously created. So, 光中化佛无数亿，化菩萨众亦无边. This is from here. Buddha Amitayos has 84,000 signs of perfection. Each sign is possessed of 84 minor marks of excellence. Each mark has 84,000 rays. Each ray extends so far as to shine over the worlds of the 10 quarters, whereby Buddha embraces and protects all the beings who think upon him and does not exclude any one of them. His rays, signs, and so forth are difficult to be explained in detail, but in simple meditation, let the mind's eye dwell upon them. If you pass through this experience, you will at the same time see all the Buddhas of the 10 quarters. Since you see all the Buddhas, it is called the Samadhi of the remembrance of the Buddhas, or in Chinese, Nian Fo San Mei. Those who have this meditation are said to have contemplated the bodies of all the Buddhas. Since they have meditated on the Buddha's body, they will also see Buddha's mind. It is great compassion that is called Buddha's mind. It is by his absolute compassion that he receives all beings. Those who have this meditation will, when they die, be born in the presence of the Buddhas in another life, meaning in the next life, and obtain a spirit of resignation wherewith to face all the consequences which shall hereafter arise. This is again a very clumsy translation. In Chinese, it's described as a 得无生忍. 得无生忍 is to attain a level, spiritual level. Yesterday we described the 4 stages leading to the fruit of an arahant. So in the case of practicing the Bodhisattva path, the final goal is a Buddhahood. Then the stages are divided into 10 stages. From first stage of Bodhisattva, second, third, fourth, fifth. So this Wusen Ren refers to attaining the stage equal to the eighth stage of a Bodhisattva. Okay, so when I come across some very difficult literal translation, I will share some comments on them. Therefore, those who have wisdom should direct their thought to the careful meditation upon that Buddha Amitayos. Let those who meditate on Buddha Amitayos begin with one single sign or mark. Let them first meditate on the white twist of hair between the eyebrows as clearly as possible. When they have done this, the 84,000 signs and marks will naturally appear before their eyes. So this is a summary, going back to the visualization, starting with visualization on the white twist of hair between the eyebrows. Those who see Amitayos will also see all the innumerable Buddhas of the 10 quarters. Since they have seen all the innumerable Buddhas, they will receive the prophecy of their future destiny to become Buddha in the presence of all the Buddhas. Such is the perception gained by a complete meditation on all forms and bodies of Buddha. And it is the 9th meditation. So this is just to give you some flavor of the 13 visualization of the Pure Land and of the Buddha in the Pure Land, and also after this, the 2 Bodhisattvas. Next, you always see the Trinity of Amitabha Buddha, and then you have on both sides Guan Yin and Da Si Zi, or Avalokitesvara and Mahastapma. So meaning after this, you go on another very elaborate visualization of Guan Yin or Avalokitesvara. I think this already gives you some flavor about maybe 1/4 of the way we are already lost in terms of the detail of visualization. You have to really stretch your imagination. Maybe people who are born as an artist, maybe they can do this type of visualization more easily than those of us who are trained to think rationally. So then, there are altogether 16 visualization, but the first 13 are visualization proper. The last 3 visualizations actually refer to the part of the sutra where the Buddha discussed the 9 levels into which those born into the Pure Land were categorized. Not so much visualization. So these are 9 visualization. Okay, these are 9 visualization. Somehow this page go blank, so you have to visualize there's something there. It's supposed to contain the 3 categories, if you like. So you are born in the highest category of rebirth, and the middle and the lowest. So, and then each one of them, the highest, there's the 13th, and the 14th, 15th, 16th. Each one of them contain again 3 subcategories. Of the highest level, there are again 3 sub-levels. So altogether, 9 levels. That's why when you praise the Buddha, you say, 九品贤令等彼岸. So when you practice the visualization of the sutra, you are guaranteed of rebirth in the Pure Land in any one of these 9 subgrades, or 3 main grades. So again, just to give you an idea, I'm not even going to cover one of them, but for the last category, the lowest of the lowest, just to give you a flavor. So finally, there are beings who will be born in the lowest form of the lowest grade. In Chinese, it's a 下品下生. If there is anyone who commits evil and even completes the 10 wicked actions, the 5 deadly sins and the like. The 5 deadly sins refer to, yesterday we talked about it, the killing of one's mother, killing of one's father, and also the killing of an arahant, or a member of the Arya Sangha. And then it is not possible to kill a Buddha. Devadatta attempted that, but he failed. But even when he failed to kill the Buddha, he once succeeded in causing the Buddha to get wounded. So that is considered a very severe act of crime, if you like, in these so-called the 5 deadly sins, or uni. And then finally is to create disharmony in the Sangha, in the monastic order. Okay. That man who is so wicked, being himself stupid and guilty of many crimes, deserves to fall into a miserable path of existence and suffer endless pains during many kalpas. Kalpas is a long period of time. On the eve of death, he will meet a good and learned teacher who will, soothing and encouraging him in various ways, preach to him the excellent Dharma and teach him the remembrance of Buddha. But being harassed by pains, he will have no time to think of Buddha. Some good friend will then say to him, even if you cannot exercise the remembrance of Buddha, you may at least utter the name Buddha Amitayos. Let him do so serenely with his voice uninterrupted. Let him be continually thinking of Buddha until he has completed 10 times of thought, repeating the formula, adoration to Buddha Amitayos, or in Chinese, Namo Amitofo. On the strength of his merit of uttering that Buddha's, I think that should be Buddha's name, he will, during every repetition, expiate the sins which involved him in births and deaths during 80 million kalpas. He will, while dying, see a golden lotus flower, like the disk of the sun appearing before his eyes. In a moment, he will be born in the world of highest happiness, meaning Sukhavati, translated as a world of highest happiness. So, after 12 great kalpas, the lotus flower will unfold. Thereupon, the Bodhisattvas Avalokitesvara and Mahasamaprapta, raising their voices in great compassion, will preach to him in detail the real state of all the elements of nature and the law of expiation of sins. On hearing them, he will rejoice and will immediately direct his thought towards the attainment of the Bodhi. Such are the beings who are to be born in the lowest form of the lowest grade to Buddhahood. The perception of the above three is called the meditation of the inferior class of beings, and is the 16th meditation. So this is the last of the three. So even in the inferior class of being, there are again three sub-levels, higher, middle, and lower. So this is 1/9 of this part of the text, just to give you an idea. It also carries a very interesting message that contrary to the teaching in the larger sutra, in the 18th vow, the 18th vow say that those who recollect the Buddha's name, but 10 times will take birth, excluding those who committed the 5 very serious crimes. But here in the visualizations, these categories of people are also included. So quite interesting. Okay, so the conclusion, the concluding part of the sutra ends with describing the benefits. So Vaidehi experienced a great awakening with clarity of mind and reached the insight into non-arising of all dharmas. So this is the same as Wusen Faran. This is the 8th stage of Bodhisattva path. While 500 female attendants and innumerable devas also awakened aspiration of the highest enlightenment. What do we mean by awakened aspiration of the highest enlightenment? It refers to develop the bodhicitta, the aspiration or the wish to attain Buddhahood. So this is a very brief introduction of the sutra, the text. the part that describes firstly the three categories of wholesome deeds that are grouped, that has a very interesting similarity with those of you who are familiar with the Lam-Rim framework, the three stages. In Chinese Buddhism, described as the 5 paths, the 5 yana, if you like. Manusya yana, Deva yana, Sravaka yana, Pacheka Buddha yana, and Bodhisattva yana, called Wu Shen Fo Fa. Then the visualization of the Pure Land and the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas. So they're all together 13, and you are supposed to do the visualization one after another, starting with the setting sun, and then the water and land and so on. Actually, there is a slide, but this morning when I did something, it became worse. Some slide went just blank. To test how good you can visualize. But maybe next lesson I will show you the missing slides. Okay. So are there any questions on the text itself? Then finally, after the 13 visualizations or contemplation proper, then there is a description of the 3 categories of rebirth in the Pure Land, or people practice starting from the highest to the middle and to the lowest. Again, each subdivided into 3 subcategories, so you have altogether 9. So I have only shared with you the lowest of the lowest, the Xia Xia Ping. So you can get an idea how lengthy this whole sutra text is. So if you like, you can get a copy of the whole text in Chinese or in English and try to do the visualization yourself. So, any question? Okay. It says in there, the visualization, if you are able to do that particular visualization, then you will see the Buddha. But that type of visualization is not for someone who is later on categorized as the lowest of the lowest level. So for people of that level, through the compassion of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, is only able to take a rebirth at the lowest grade and have to wait for a period of time before receiving the teaching from the 2 bodhisattvas, not directly from the Buddha himself. So there is a difference between the 9 grades of the 9 pankats, if you like, of rebirth. This, when we come to share the larger Sukhavati or the larger Pure Land Sutra, will also have something similar. So when we get to that part, then it will also answer the question that you raised. But this type of 13 visualization is not easy to do. For people of a lower category, it's beyond them. Okay. No, when you are born there, you don't attain the 8th stage. The 8th stage, if you go to the text itself, when it describes the highest of the highest, or the middle of the highest level, or the low of the highest level, then in those categories, yes, these beings who are born at that higher grades or higher pankat, they have attained, they would have attained a higher level of bodhisattva stage. So for those who have attained the 8th stage, they have the ability. You must understand in the context of the whole Pure Land teaching, the text belongs to what is called Mahayana text. So the Mahayana group of teachings aspire to attain Sama Sambuddha, perfect Buddhahood. For example, just now we talk about Pratyeka Buddha. Pratyeka Buddha is a solitary Buddha. So in all schools of Buddhism, even Theravada Buddhism, they acknowledge that the Buddha, having practiced the Bodhisattva in Pali, this is described as a Bodhisattva, is the Sanskrit Bodhisattva. So in the Pali tradition, you find a lot of stories relating to our historical Buddha when he practiced the Bodhisattva path. So eventually he attained perfect enlightenment, called Sama Sambuddha. So even in the Theravada tradition, they acknowledge that although an Arahant and Sama Sambuddha had both in common, that is to say they are already out of this cycle of samsara, there is a difference in terms of their level of enlightenment. So for example, when we say Pratyeka Buddha and Arahant, they are able to liberate themselves. So that's why they are called solitary Buddha. In the case of a Bodhisattva is one who, after attaining certain stage, has the ability to not only be liberated from samsara, but has the ability of sharing the enlightenment experience with others, and to enlighten others, if you like, to lead others to realization of enlightenment, to get out of samsara. So you are only able to do that at least when you reach the 8th stage of Bodhisattva path. Before that, you don't have the ability. So when we talk about rebirth in the Pure Land, it is not synonymous as the ultimate goal of our spiritual quest. The ultimate goal, as in any Mahayana teaching, is to attain a perfect Buddhahood, Sama Sambuddha, or in Sanskrit, Samyak Sambuddha. So in order to do that, you have to tread the Bodhisattva career from first stage to second, third, fourth, and until the 8th stage. Then you go on. The 10th stage is synonymous with Buddhahood. So the 8th stage, when you are able to attain the 8th stage, then you can go to another world system and help other sentient beings. Because the complete path of a Bodhisattva requires that he or she help other sentient beings. So we have to understand this whole context. So in the Buddhist tradition, if you want to make it very simple, to simplify all matters, you have the choice when you come to the term of a serious practice of following the Arahant path or following the Bodhisattva path. In the case of following the Arahant path, is following the example of the personal disciples of the Buddha. There are many examples of these great disciples, like Sariputta or Sariputra and Moggallana, Mahakāśyapa, and so on. They listened to the Buddha's teaching and followed him. So they are immediate, they have a very strong wish to get out of samsara. So they attain Arahant and get liberated from samsara. So we can do that. We can follow the examples of these great disciples. Or we can follow the example of the Buddha himself. In the text, it is said that our historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha or Sakyamuni Buddha, had in the past, in the era of Dipankara Buddha, he would have been able to gain a liberation out of samsara, but he made an aspiration to be like the Buddha himself, like Buddha Dipankara, and he aimed for nothing less than perfect enlightenment or Buddhahood. So you either follow the example of the disciples or you follow the example of the Buddha. So there is the tradition of what we call Sravakayana or Pratcheka Buddhayana and the tradition of Bodhisattvayana. So in the modern context, the three living traditions, the Theravada tradition emphasize on renunciation to get out of samsara as soon as possible. Whereas the other two traditions, Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, they aspire to follow the Bodhisattva career and aim for perfect enlightenment. But to become a fully enlightened Buddha is a long career. It's a longer career, like the historical Buddha. That is also acknowledged by Theravada Buddhism in the Jataka story. So he had to perfect all the paramitas before he finally obtained perfect enlightenment in 2,500 years ago in India. He was born as a prince, renounced later on, practiced for 6 years, and then obtained Sammasambuddha, perfect enlightenment in Bodh Gaya under the Bodhi tree. So we have to be clear about these two options, if you like. So in the case of both, there are again stages. When I shared with you Alec's story, he said he was striving for the first stage of Arahant. So in the case of Bodhisattva, there are 10 stages. So in the fourth stage of Arahant, one attains Arahantship. In the case of a Bodhisattva career, ultimately one attains perfect Buddhahood. Okay, now let's go on to the small group discussion. And for this session, you can use the following as a guideline for discussion. So firstly, what are the elements of the stages on the path to Buddhahood in the Visualization Sutra? And how do these compare with the Lamrim stages? So for those of you who are not familiar, maybe you can get one of the one of the friends who had attended the Lamrim class to share this with you. Secondly, what have you learned from the introduction to this sutra? I say introduction because just to read the sutra, it will take more than an hour, even reading very fast. So I'm trying to make things simple to let you get a gist of this particular sutra by picking two of the visualization proper, one visualization of the setting sun, which is the easiest of the 13 visualization, and then the visualization of the Buddha, of the Buddha Amitayus, which you find quite mind-boggling. But many of the other visualizations are like that. And then finally share with you the three stages that relates to the 14, 15, and the 16. In each of them, you have the description of the three categories of the higher level, the middle level, and the lowest level. And we don't even cover the complete three lowest level with three sub-levels. Instead, we only pick 1/3, the lower of the lowest. The lowest of the lowest. So what have you learned from this introduction? And then thirdly, is it easy to practice the visualizations as taught? Okay, let's break ourselves into small groups for the small group discussion. Can one of the groups here share with us your discussion, the summary of your discussion just now? Okay, you are ready to share? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Let's make it short, huh? My name is Kim Swat. I joined Lamrim very late. After people have gone more than 2 years, then I walk in. So my purpose of joining Lamrim at my stage with all so much white hair is to sow the seed for my next life, okay? So from the little I know, the question one is how we compare Lamrim to the sutra that Sufu is teaching, has taught us just now, the introduction. Lamrim is very, very detailed. It teaches you from step one to step by step for you to reach Buddhahood. So it is like if you aspire to reach Buddhahood, that is the course. It even teaches you how to develop a heart, the heart to be generous. It teaches you how to develop your bodhicitta heart, step by step. Visualization sutra to our group is shorter. You focus on your meditation, which Lamrim also teaches, then you can, like Queen Vaidehi, reach 8th stage, but then you have to have enough good roots. Otherwise, all of us can still at least go to the lower stage, and that is with the grace of Amitayus. Okay? So we were saying that we can still reach the Pure Land, and there the conditions will be very conducive for us to reach Buddhahood. So generally for older people like us, maybe that is shorter. Okay? So that is the sharing on question one, the difference between Lamrim, which is very detailed, but you definitely will reach there. The course is very long. It is already into its 3rd year. And we are now at a later stage. We haven't gone to meditation yet. Then we can do visualization, and with that, to reach Pure Land, whereby we can, the conditions are conducive for us to reach Buddhahood. The next one, question 2, what have we learned from this sutra? We have sharings that by chanting Amitabha Buddha and rejoice in that chanting during our last moments, we can still reach Pure Land. And one of us said, she has been doing Amitahod, 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 but now she realized that to do that, she must also try to fit in visualization. And the other learning is, don't ever commit the 5 evils, which are, don't kill your mother, don't kill your father, don't hurt any arahant, don't cause injury to Buddha, but that one we don't have, and don't sow discord among the Sangha members. It also says, we are reminded to do good deeds to cultivate more merit, so that if we manage to reach Amitabha's Pure Land, hopefully we are not at the lowest, slightly further up. Is visualization easy? In our group, it is 3-3. Some say it's doable, it's reachable, they have confidence. The rest say, it may be doable, but I think it's very difficult for me. So that's all the sharing we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we have sharing from this cluster of groups? So any group has members who are quite familiar with the details of the Lamrim teaching or the framework?
Good morning. Just to let you know, I went to Lamrim because of Sufu. Thank you to Sufu. Because I think 8 years ago, I was actually looking for books for, after I retired, looking for Buddhist books. So I've got affinity with Tan Xiang because I was a very early, unexpected donor of this temple. So you can see my name at the 6th floor, which I discovered later. So many years later, I retired, and then I came to Tan Xiang to borrow books. I was doing a collection of Buddhist books, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. So I heard that Tan Xiang has got a good library, so I came to this floor, 4th floor library to borrow the books. So I was asked by the librarian, or recommended by the librarian, to Venerable Chanti to help to transcribe Lamrim Chenmo, I think a lecture by Professor Andre from IBC, International Buddhist College, Sadao. So gave me a disc, I think 23 or something, so I took back, and I came back and returned back and says, I do not know the names of the Tibetan lamas, I do not know how to write down. So suddenly, after that, Reverend Weaver asked to conduct, was having a Lamrim session talk, whatever, and there was about 50 people. So we started the thing, and then after 3 years, there was only 8 of us left. So that was under the greater path, the greater is Lam Rim Chen Mo. So Lam Rim has got three editions. One is the great version, the middle version, which we are doing this every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. So I think if you all those who are interested should join us at the Saturday class, because it's very good. It's very good for us. Those who can have time, please come and listen. Don't know, never mind. Just what they call plant some seeds first, so the seeds will grow. Okay. So the other version is a concise version, which I had the affinity to, very lucky because of Sufu. I was aware of what is Lam Rim, so when they asked me to do the concise version, I did it at the Chok Ki Gyal scene, but actually the concise version is looks simple, but it's what they call is a bit too simple for me maybe. So when we had conducted the middle length, I was asked, I think, Brother Boon Bing to come for they were already some way, I think finished the first vehicle, the lesser being. So, but I joined when I was under doing the middle being. Anyway, to cut the thing short, Lam Rim actually consists of the what they call teaching you from lesser being, which you come back to become you aspire to be a human being, or a human being which could be with resources, means to be a king or with a rich person. And then for lesser being, you are concentrated on learning what is karma and the law, the importance of law of cause and effect. And then for the next lecture, after you have gone through this, at the same time also, when you are a lesser being, you learn the importance of precious human life. So for precious human life, only the vehicle for us to be able to ascend to become a Buddha. So for Lam Rim is actually a training manual. For this visualization, this Amitabha, I mean, I actually from the Pure Land side, I chant what they call what they call Tai Pi in Sanskrit. I also chant mantra to Mahasama Prapta. So I'm well versed because I've been doing this for many years, and I what they call this affinity. So I'm from the Pure Land side, but I do not actually know much about the Pure Land Sutras. Basically, when we chant, we only visualize or concentrate on what they call. For example, if I were to chant at night, last time I didn't chant in front of the image of the Kuan Yin. I just chant and then I think about Kuan Yin, and then I visualize the Kuan Yin image, which I see at the Penang Buddhist Association. That's how I see it. So that's my visualization. So I didn't know so until today I think that there's a visualization I'm supposed to do. So from Kuan Yin, then I went on to learn about Mahasama Prapta. So that Amitabha. So, from my chanting, I'm doing visualization, I think. So, not the sunset type of thing. So, anyway, I'm going too far already. So, the differences compare Lam Rim. Basically, as I was saying, that the lesser being and then the middle being is the same as under this Visualization Sutra, which is actually to be aspired to be Arahant. The Lam Rim will lead you from the human being, the human vehicle, to then to be Arahant, means for renunciation and liberation. And from then on, you find that it's not enough, so you need to to help other beings, all other sentient beings. So when you do that, you have to go for the Bodhisattva path. It will lead you step by step. So you feel very confident because it's actually practical training of the mind. The path of purification, how you deal it, is actually written by a Tibetan monk, Tsongkhapa. So if you're interested, you could find that you should study from there. I don't know. But Pure Land is also a good method. It's because for those who are don't have time, then you can do the visualization. And then for me, I come from there, so I can tell you that it is important to give you some faith and confidence. So I don't know whether I'm correct or not. So you go in and then you find out for yourself. You will experience your affinity to Avalokitesvara, which is Kuan Yin, and Mahasama Prapta, which is Tai Seng Thiposat, and Amitabha. You see. So for me, I chant. So I still chant. So even though I study Lam Rim, I still chant because that's where I come from. My vehicle, Anyway, I go too far already. What have you learned from the introduction to this sutra? What I've learned is that I have not studied the sutra. I have not, even though I chant the mantras, I have not actually studied the lesser Sukhavati, the sutra and the greater what they call Amitabha Sutra. So maybe it's time for me to do that. Okay. The introduction is very interesting because it just us to aspire to want to know more. For me. Is it easy to practice the Visualization Sutra taught in the Sutra? I think it is not easy, but it is generally, to me, it is easier method compared to the other methods. other methods not so easy. It's not easy to become a monk, you know. Neither is it easy to become a Bodhisattva. So really, visualization and to chant Amitabha is very, very simple. My mantras are even harder for you, you know. So Namo Amitabha is very easy. So it gives you great comfort, and then you just have to visualize Amitabha only lah. So after you visualize Amitabha, then maybe you move to Kuan Yin Posat and then to Tai Seng Chi Posat. So you know you'll be more ready to accept more Buddha Dharma. From there on, you'll be the path will be easier for you. For me, I believe that after chanting so many times, so many years, you open the path and then you have affinity. Then you will lead you to the right place. For example, lead me to Tan Siang. And there are many places also I've gone to because this is part and parcel of you know when you chant also you also cultivate your morality and you want to do good, you want to help people, you see. So that's our thing. So anyway, what has the Visualization Sutra taught me is that there are various methods which we can use. For example, I was telling them that in case you are too late already, you take a Grab. You miss the bus, you take a Grab. So maybe this is Pure Land is all of a Grab for us. So immediately we have to chant many times of Namo Amitabha, and hopefully we will reach there also. So I think that's all. I think thank you.
Okay, sharing by a group here. It's okay, you are not familiar with the Lam Rim, you can skip the first question, and go on to the second and the third. But if you are familiar also, you can do some sharing. Can we get a group from here, this cluster? Okay, the second group? Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning, Sư Phụ Venerable Wegu. Good morning, all my Dharma friends. Okay, I'm going to talk about a bit of Lam Rim because I joined Venerable Jiran's class from the very beginning. Actually, in Lam Rim, there are 3 stages. That is the first to be a lesser being, intermediate, and a great being. So for the first stage, it's more to be like you wish, you must have faith. Also, first you must have faith, take faith, and then you have to take refuge in a triple gem. After that, you want to be reborn in a better realm, not in a lower realm. Okay, the second stage also is first and second is more to be reborn in a better realm. But for the third stage, you aspire to be a bodhisattva. Okay, so that means you have to cultivate all the wisdom, compassion, bodhicitta. So what I'm going to say is actually has been told by this brother here. He knows a lot because he is. So the third stage is to be a bodhisattva, to save all sentient beings, and then, but you have to meditate. But Sư Phụ Venerable Jiran said the last stage is actually meditation. So we haven't come to the stage yet. So I think I don't have to talk a lot because whatever that Sister Ang and this brother has already mentioned everything. All this Lam Rim. And then also in Lam Rim we studied about this, about this, not to be born in the lower realm. You have all the realms, the hell realm, and then everything there are many hell realms also, so frightening after learning the Dharma, sometimes we all say, we're quite scared, no? No, different in the hell, and then in animal realm, and many types of realm, a lot to study, And then also in the Lam Rim, it's actually a very comprehensive, a Dharma lesson. Actually, it includes like the 10 wholesome deeds, the unwholesome deeds, everything, whatever Sư Phụ is part of this, like Pure Land, like what Sư Phụ has been teaching us now these 2 days. We also learn about this, the heinous crime, the 5, like have been mentioned by the sister, So actually everything. So the most important is, the last stage is to cultivate bodhicitta, compassion, loving kindness, and all this. Aspire to be a bodhisattva. I think that's all. I'm going to talk. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the sharing of the discussion of the various groups. Okay, I'd like to give a summary of the discussion topics. So, especially for the first one, just now, many members have already shared what they learned in different Lam Rim teaching sessions. This term Lam Rim is a Tibetan term. that can be literally translated as stages of the path. So it actually started with an Indian teacher, to be more accurate, a teacher who now is part of Bangladesh. Yeah? So he was born a prince, and then he became a monk, and then he learned from various teachers. The name of this teacher is, what's the name of the teacher? Huh? Atisha. So Atisha has a affinity with Southeast Asia because he came to the land of gold, Suvarna Dipa or Suvarna Bhumi, and he came to learn about developing bodhicitta from a teacher. And after that, he had affinity with the land of snow, Tibet, and then he spent the last part of his life going to Tibet. And he was asked by a king, because Tibetan Buddhism had, by that time, became quite corrupted. People were practicing very, very strange practices. So then Atisha wrote a very short, concise teaching that if you want to practice spiritually, you must go step by step. So he left a text which is called the stages, something translated as the lamb, something. So from Atisha's work, very concise work about, actually it was from him that he gave the idea that you go step by step. From the foundation, then you go to the next step, and then you go to the higher step. So he described 3 stages in all, ultimately leading to Buddhahood. And from him, it influenced Tibetan Buddhism, the various traditions in Tibetan Buddhism. So just now, our sisters and brothers shared the work of Tsongkhapa. Tsongkhapa was a reformist that established the Gelugpa school, the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism, and he left 3 works. The longer teaching on Lamrim, that's called Lamrim Chenmo, and then the middle length teaching, that is what Venerable Jiran is doing, and then there is a shorter version. Then another school of Tibetan Buddhism, the Kagyu school, also has a teaching that is based on these 3 stages as outlined by Atisha. And this is the work of Gampopa, when he produced a work which is now translated as the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So they are quite similar. So in these 3 stages of development spiritually, the emphasis is you must begin from building the foundation. Chinese Buddhism, in comparison, in the various schools of Chinese Buddhism, do not put emphasis on these stages, with the exception of this particular text. But even this particular text was not written, or was not compiled, or was not meant to convey the 3 stages, but in this part of the text where different categories of good deeds are mentioned, then you find them grouped in something quite similar to the Lamrim context. So if we go back to the text that I shared with you this morning, at the level of human endeavor, okay, this first line is not inside the text, but I added them. So the text enumerated 孝养父母, which is filial piety. 奉事师长, which is to serve and respect one's teachers and elders. 慈心菩萨 is to develop compassionate mind, and 修十善业, and abstain from doing any injury to other beings. And then finally, to cultivate the 10 virtuous actions. These elements are all present in the Lam-Rim lowest level. But you also find other elements as described in the Visualization Sutra. In the second categories, I group them as the level of Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha. Again, this first line is not from the sutra text, but I added them. But here you see elements of taking refuge, taking precepts, primarily when you refer to monastic precepts, taking the bhikshu and the bhikshuni precept, and then to behave in proper ethic or manners. So interestingly, the taking refuge in the Triple Gem is put in this second category. In the Lam-Rim context, it's put in the first category. But we can say that taking refuge is at all three levels. There's a taking refuge at a lower level. So when you take refuge at a lower level, at least you are assured of a better next life, that you will not be born in the lower realms. At least you will attain rebirth in human realm or asura realms or the heavenly realm. But even when we take when we are fully ordained as a monk or nun, when we take the bhikshu precept or the bhikshuni precept, we also have to repeat the refuge. And even taking a bodhisattva precept, we also have to do that. So we can say that, in a sense, taking refuge in the Triple Gem has to be done at all three levels. But in particular, the Lam-Rim group it as the first. Then the other elements you also find similar in the Lam-Rim. Then you come to the third. Again, the first line, I call this at the Bodhisattva level. I added this myself, this line. So here you have developing bodhicitta and deeply believe in the principle of cause and effect. Now, understanding and believing in cause and effect would have been put in a Lam-Rim as the first. But in this case, it's put in the third category. And then study and recite the Mahayana doctrine, and to persuade and encourage others to pursue the same cause as themselves. So, again, quite similar. Bodhicitta, practicing Mahayana, but sensing in Guo is put in this, but in the Lam-Rim it would have been put in the first category. Otherwise, most of the elements fall into quite similar framework. But on the whole, after Atisha, the various schools of Tibetan Buddhism emphasize a lot on the need to practice step by step, according to this good framework. And it is a good framework for us to practice spiritually. Even when you can use this for any type of practice that you use. So even if you are doing the Pure Land practice, then you can also use these 3 stages as a framework of your practice. Okay, this much I want to share, but just now, let me go to that, the visualization. Go back to the visualization. the 13 visualization, I missed the second slide just now. So let me share with you. Okay, we saw this slide earlier. So the order that we're supposed to practice is from visualizing the setting sun, followed by water, and then the ground of the Pure Land, the trees in the Pure Land, the ponds, and then 60 other various objects. And then seventhly, the lotus throne of the Buddha, followed by the image of Amitabha Buddha. And then ninthly, of Amitabha Buddha himself. So this we introduced this morning. And then followed by Avalokitesvara or Guan Yin Pusa. And then of Mahastha Mahaprapta, Tasitsu Pusa. In Hokkien, Tai Se Ji Po Sat. And then 12, the aspirants of the Pure Land, and 13, Amitabha and the 2 Bodhisattvas. So these are the 13 visualizations. Some of them are repeating, like visualization of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva individually, and then you have the 13th visualization of the Buddha with the 2 Bodhisattvas. All these are detailed visualizations to be done for these visualization sutra or text. So this is one of the 3 main method that you can follow to practice the Pure Land or Nianfo. So there are 4 methods of Nianfo. The first method, which is common and which is the most commonly practiced, is called Ci Ming Nianfo. That is just reciting the name of the Buddha. And where does this particular method come from? It comes from the text that we are going to introduce in the next session. That is the smaller sutra. The smaller sutra, which is popularly recited in every Chinese temple as the content of the evening service. For so Ami To Jing, in Hokkien, Ami To Keng. And then the second type of meditation is to use this 13 visualization of the Pure Land, of various aspects of the Pure Land, from the setting sun to the water, to the land, to the ponds, to the lotus throne, to the Buddha and the Bodhisattva. Altogether 13 types of visualization. So you can do the visualization of Pure Land and its inhabitant, mainly the mostly important, the Buddha and also the 2 accompanying Bodhisattvas. This is the second method. Then you can also do, this is called Guan Xiang Nianfo. Then the third type of Nianfo is Guan Xiang Nianfo. This is using a visual aid. It can be a Buddha image, it can be, for example, Amitabha Buddha. So you can have a picture, or you can have a 3-dimensional statue of a Buddha. Then you just focus your attention to that Buddha image or picture by observing the details. And you are so completely absorbed by that contemplation or visualization that you develop a deep impression of that image, so that afterwards, if you close your eyes, that image is as vivid as if you had the eye open. So that is a method using visual aid to visualize. It is simpler than doing these 13 types of visualization, but also based on contemplation or visualization with a visual aid. Then there is another type called the True Nature Buddha Recollection, Shi Xiang Nianfo. So the Shi Xiang Nianfo, is the practice of Chan Buddhism. Chan Buddhism. So when Chan Buddhism became very popular in China, it became the predominant, the leading schools of Chinese Buddhism. In fact, most of the Chinese monasteries, most of the Chinese temples have a Chan lineage. So one way you can tell whether that temple belongs to the Chan lineage is you go to the main hall. And if you go to the main hall, if you see the Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, and then you see the two disciples, like in Tansheng Temple, so who do you have? On the left side of the Buddha, you have Mahakassapa. And then on the other side, you have a young, handsome monk, Ananda. So then you can conclude that this temple is of a Chan lineage. So we are of the Chan lineage. Or in Japan, it became pronounced as a Zen from the same Chinese character or kanji character. Why do we have this? In fact, if you go to, for example, Mahindrama Temple, Theravada Temple, then the two chief disciples of the Buddha, who represented these two chief disciples? Who? Moggallana and Sariputta, or Moggallana and Sariputra. So, Moggallana and Sariputra are the two foremost disciples of the Buddha. One, Moggallana, for his, he was foremost for psychic power. And then, what about Sariputra? Foremost for wisdom. So, they are the two most important disciples of the Buddha. But they enter into Nirvana even before the Buddha. So the Chan lineage started with the story about the Buddha one day at the Vulture's Peak. In the midst of a great assembly, everybody was waiting for the Buddha to give the teaching. But that day, the Buddha did not give any verbal teaching. Instead, he just picked a flower and then showed it to the assembly. And most people didn't know what the Buddha was trying to do, except one person, Mahakassapa. So Mahakassapa smiled to the Buddha, and then the Buddha then only started to speak. What he said was to the effect, Mahakassapa, I now transmit the teaching to you. So this, we are told, is the beginning of Chan Buddhism. So Mahakassapa is considered the first patriarch of Chan Buddhism. And then why Ananda? Because then Mahakassapa passed this teaching to Ananda. And that lineage continued until Bodhidharma in India. And Bodhidharma had affinity with China. So he traveled from India all the way to China. And from Bodhidharma, that Chan lineage was passed to the sixth patriarch, Huineng. And from Huineng, you see, before that it was one-to-one transmission of that lineage. From Huineng, he was able to transmit to more than one inheritors. And after Huineng, the Chan tradition subdivided into eventually 5 main branches. So most of the Chinese temples belong to this lineage. So later on, this the period that Chan Buddhism flourished in China was the golden age of Chinese civilization also, during the period of the Tang, the great Tang dynasty. But after Tang dynasty, the Pure Land school started by San Tao, and some other prominent teachers that we will be introducing in the next text that we will cover, that is the smaller text. The Pure Land School started to gain a popularity. And then there was, at the end of the Song dynasty, some Chan teacher who advocated the combination of the practice of both Chan Buddhism and the Pure Land teaching. So in fact, the contents of the morning and evening service originated from the Chan tradition. But interesting enough, the content of every Chan monastery for the evening service is none other than the Amitabha, Foso Amitabha Jing. So there is many of the Chan patriarchs also encourage the practice of Pure Land. So in Chinese it became known as Chan Jing Shuang Xiu, the practice of Chan and Pure Land together. So in the case of a practice like this, when people are familiar with reciting the Buddha's name, so in the Chan practice, they use a Gong An or a Go An, that is to lead you to transcend duality. For example, you are asked by the teacher to think about Gong An, which may be what is the sound when you clap with one hand. It's something quite meaningless. So there are many Gong An like that. So when some of these teachers try to merge or try to combine these two methods, one of a very popular Gong An that was used was, okay, now you recite the Amitabha's Buddha name. So if you are in the Chan hall, then you are asked to ask yourself one question. Nian Fo是谁? Who is the one that is reciting the Buddha's name? Okay? So this type of practice is called Si Xiang Nian Fo. Going back to understand the true nature of self. So this is the practice of Chan Buddhism. So there are altogether 4. Let me repeat. So the most popular, the most common is reciting Amitabha. This you find in the smaller text. Then the second type of practice is the 13 visualization that we have introduced in the past 2 days. Okay, then the third type is just a visualization, a simpler form of visualization using visual aid in the form of a 3-dimensional Buddha image or a 2-dimensional picture. Then the fourth is the Chan practice called the True Nature Nian Fo. These are the 4 methods. So you can, in this particular course, I'm going through the 3 important texts to introduce how this all came about. In a way, the second and the third method come from this particular text. So you can have a very elaborate 13 visualization from setting sun up to the Buddha and the accompanying Bodhisattvas, or you can use just one of them, but even better. Here you are just relying on the teachings, something very abstract. But for people who find it very hard, then look at an image of a Buddha. So this is the third method. And then you can also use the Chan method. Okay, I hope this is useful for you to understand where this particular text fits into the whole Pure Land teaching framework. So are there more questions? If not, then we will end the session with the dedication of merit. So we can do that together. Okay, so please put your palms together. Transference of merit. I vow that this merit will adorn the Buddha's Pure Land, repaying the 4 kinds of kindness above and aiding those below in the wretched realms. May those who see and hear all aspire to perfect enlightenment. And when this retribution body is done, be born together in the land of bliss. Terima kasih.